Well, hi there, everybody. This week's chat with Caroline. I'm really delighted this week to welcome our South Cumbria colleagues. Really pleased that you've all joined us and delighted to have colleagues here from South Cumbria. Just before we introduce ourselves, I'll just do my usual few minutes of an update on what are the things that have been going on. I've been off for a couple of weeks, but there have been a few things that I just wanted to share with you, if that's okay. So the first thing I wanted to talk about for a moment was our colleagues who work in substance misuse services, drug and alcohol services across the patch. We've had some really good discussions in the last week or so about how we need to be working more closely together. I met with all the public health leads this week, and we're going to be doing, and there was a workshop last week with various clinicians. And I know from all the integrated care partnerships, there's more for us to do to understand how we access those services on a 24/7 basis. So be really delighted if lots of you can get involved in that work, if it's touching your services. Thank you very much. The second thing I wanted to say was a really big thank you and a big well done to our diabetes team who've been shortlisted for the national awards going along later this month. Big shout out to you guys. Well done. Really great. Third thing is CQC. You'll be aware that we've had now both the Lancashire and Lancashire Care CQC report and the South Cumbria report. We'll be working together now in the improvement journey around that. And we've had our board meeting today, and we're delighted to have the Children's Cove services who came along and dental services who did so well, and we were able to receive presentations from them and also say a very big thank you. So well done to everybody, and it'll be good now for us to be working jointly on our improvement plan with South Cumbria. And just my final thing I wanted to update about is Ursula Martin has just joined us this week. She is our new Director of Improvement. I know she'll be delighted to be out and about and meeting you, and I hope you'll all give her a warm welcome. She'll help us in our improvement journey going forward. I now wanted to introduce colleagues, well, leave them to introduce themselves from who are working on the South Cumbria work. So, Jo, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm Jo Johnston. So I've worked in South Cumbria now for a good while and have moved across to LCFT as of Tuesday morning. So it's very good. I'm going to be working as the Locality Manager for South Cumbria. So I'm really looking forward to working with some teams that I've not worked with before. But hopefully it'll be a really smooth journey and looking forward to it.
Okay. I'm Louisa Swift. I'm the Head of Operations for South Cumbria. Equally, I'm delighted to be working across South Cumbria. I think, in terms of the people that I've met today, we have a real passionate workforce, and it's great to have everybody on board.
I'm Alison Napier. I'm a consultant old age psychiatrist in Lancaster, and I've been there for so long now that I previously worked all the way across the bay, and Jo and I are old friends, old colleagues. So it's been lovely actually to meet old colleagues again, and I'm looking forward very much to sort of working across the bay and really developing some strong partnerships and really improving the services that we offer across the bay. I'm taking a clinical and medical lead role in the initial part of the transition at least.
Brilliant. And we'll just talk in a moment about some of the really good work that's already gone on and some of the plans going forward. I'm really hoping that you'll send your questions in, folks, because this is supposed to be a really interactive session. So get typing, please, and send them in. I think just before we start, there was one question I think we received, Stuart, about Southport and Formby and why we aren't, because we've just, as you'll be aware, changed our name from Lancashire Care to Lancashire and South Cumbria Foundation Trust, really very purposefully to invite and welcome our South Cumbria colleagues and to really show the breadth of the services that reflect the patch that we're now responsible for. So I think I'm looking at Stuart, but I've already had a quick look at the question. It was, why didn't we change our name for, was it Southport and Formby?
It was indeed. And funny enough, someone's also said, would it be great to answer some of the questions from the previous video stream at the start of this stream. So it's exactly what we're doing. So they've obviously read our minds earlier. And the question was exactly that: why they're not included, because they're part of Merseyside.
Okay, so I'll answer that, and then in terms of answering from the previous video stream, we can't answer all of them, but need to make sure, I'm pretty sure we have got everything that answered on the website. And we'll take some more at the end as well if they're not related to South Cumbria. So yeah, understandably, if you're not, if your geography doesn't necessarily cover South Cumbria and Lancashire, then an understandable question, which is why didn't we change the name when we invited and welcomed Formby and Southport colleagues? And I guess it's a bit of a difficult one. We can't just change our name according to the services that we take on, and particularly we've changed our name for South Cumbria because first of all the ICS, and we've also had some feedback about stop using acronyms, so thank you for that. It's a good reminder to us. So the integrated care system, of which everybody throughout the country is part of an integrated care system or a sustainability and transformation partnership, is Lancashire and South Cumbria. And the fact that Cumbria Partnership Trust is no longer as well, it's not. So those are the two main reasons that we have changed our name, and we haven't for other services that we've taken on outside of our geography. In Northumberland, Tyne and Wear, they've obviously taken on the North Cumbria services, and they have also changed their name to reflect the significant number of service users they'll be supporting and the staff that they'll be assimilating into their services. That doesn't mean that you're not all incredibly welcome, and that the services that we provide in Southport and Formby, who've done a fantastic job in improving, and we've just been talking about those today actually at the board, about the great improvement work that you've done, and really well done to you, and you really are a very important part of the services that we provide. But those are the reasons why we've decided to change the name to incorporate South Cumbria. Should we maybe take one more before we start talking about South Cumbria?
If that's okay, it's not South Cumbria related, but it is a good question. I think Gary would like to know, given the recent focus on climate change and the NHS commitment to the Carbon Reduction Strategy 2009, do we know how the Trust is helping to cut back on emissions, and is there an example of a strategy for achieving those goals?
So we do have, thank you Gary for your question, and we do have a carbon reduction strategy and action plan. And we have had year-on-year reductions in our carbon footprint, and obviously been more challenging now with South Cumbria services as well. But we'll put the detail of that onto the website so that people can see a little bit more of that detail. But again, very, very important for us. So thank you for the question, Gary.
And as you said about the use of abbreviations, so I'm sure no one's going to use any of them for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
So let's come to Jo and just understand a little bit. Jo, you've joined us from South Cumbria, where you had a managerial role there, and you've come across, and I think you're going to just tell us a little bit about some of the things that you're involved in terms of improvement as well.
So I think just to clarify, I've come across from a different system. So I think we've been working in networks, but obviously we're moving into a locality-based structure just in South Cumbria at the moment, which is giving us some real positives, some benefits. People are feeling very much part of one community down in South Cumbria at the moment, and that's good. We're looking at some improvements in terms of our staffing levels, particularly for our inpatient units. Obviously there's some challenges about recruitment of staff, but having the budget there to be able to recruit is a real benefit. And having a structure in place, we've already, through the onboarding events and through the engagement events, we've already been advised of all the kind of learning opportunities, particularly with the Edward Jenner and the Mary Sequel programmes. So staff are already starting to get excited about being able to do some training, particularly in leadership. But there's lots of opportunity out there that perhaps hasn't always been there in South Cumbria before. So I think people are particularly excited about that. I think people are, so I personally I'm quite looking forward to coming into a new structure, to seeing how that works, especially working with the ICP and the ICCs,
Yeah.
The integrated care partnerships and integrated care communities. So I knew I would do that straight away. So particularly looking forward to working with the integrated care communities and working on how we can improve that kind of physical mental health integration as well.
No, that's great, really good. So one of the things that you're in the process of doing is we've got more funding, new funding which is great, from our CCGs, and there's new nurse staffing going on to is it the inpatient areas, Jo?
It's into inpatients, and it's into our it will be into our crisis resolution home treatment team to provide that kind of, to start to build towards a core 24 service, just to augment that. So we're just looking now at how we actually do that to get the best effect for that money, really, and to give the best results for our patients.
Yeah. And has it been historically quite hard to recruit staff?
It particularly over the last few years, it has become more difficult to recruit qualified staff. Recruiting support staff hasn't been so difficult, but definitely recruiting qualified nurses, recruiting psychologists is challenging, and we just need to work through starting to grow our own. Okay. So again, we've had some access to the trainee nurse associate programs through LCFT already, and people are really getting engaged with that, so that we can start to think about how we can develop our own qualified staff.
And apprenticeships, presumably, as well, through the apprenticeships levy, and all sorts of opportunities there. Alison, will you just come to you? Will you just talk about the work that you're doing with the medical workforce and your thoughts around that, and new funding that you've managed to achieve with that?
Yeah. One of the key things that we identified, I think we met with some of the medics and we looked at the various reports that have been related to issues around medical staffing. And out of hours cover, I think, has been a major challenge in South Cumbria, with only a consultant tier of cover, and that being quite vulnerable across the organisation. So we've taken steps already to begin introducing a junior doctor's rota. So we've got recruitment interviews going ahead next week, and we're looking to introduce a 24-hour cover rota at that level, which will include the additional staffing of approximately 4 doctors, which is not only out of hours, obviously that's 24 hours a day. So I think that'll be really positive. We're still keeping the GP out of hours cover initially until we can make sure that it's really robust. And I think that'll be really positive, because it will also, I think, in the longer term, we're also hoping to introduce a training element to that, so that we can, as I think Jo said, look to grow our own doctors and try and bring Cumbria back into the training envelope, because I think it suffered having lost its training posts for junior doctors sometime in the last 10 years. I'm not exactly sure when. So that hasn't then allowed people to be attracted so much into the area. So we're hoping that we could sort of reinvigorate that, and we're looking at partnerships with the university as well to develop that academically, so it will become a more attractive place, hopefully, for people to come to. So that's
and how about the qualified medics, and how will they be involved in all the developments that are already going on in LCFT and the consultant meetings and the education and training around that?
Well, as soon as we knew this was going ahead, and it was a little bit on off for a while, but as soon as we knew that it was, we've already got the consultants involved. I've been up and met with them, and they've also been invited to our locality consultant meetings in their various specialties. So I think we recognise that peer support is really vital in terms of people feeling confident, and it's about quality as well. I think if you've got that peer benchmarking happening, that's really positive. So all of that's already ongoing. Obviously, it's a journey for everybody, and it's getting to know people, but I think so far I think it's going positively, and we've already introduced some medical leadership roles for the consultants in South Cumbria, so that's already, Miriam was already in her post, but we're also looking at that for older adults, and so that people feel involved, and we're getting locality leadership in place already.
And then I guess leadership development will be really important as part of that. Good to hear from you, Jo, that people are already feeling positive about opportunities. So Louisa, you've just taken on the role of service manager to support the areas. Just tell us a little bit about what you're involved in.
Okay, so a lot of the involvement has been in discussion with the CCG, so albeit we've managed to secure the additional funding via the transfer of the services, there's also looking at the all-age eating disorder service. So we're working with Morecambe Bay CCG to that model and what funding's available and how soon we can implement that. We're also, in terms of the CAMS team, ensuring that there's full involvement in the Thrive development and learning from elements that have already been in place in Lancashire and LCFT. We've got a new programme lead who's in Lancashire Care and obviously in Lancashire and South Cumbria Care now, and she will be absolutely involved in the Thrive element and developments across the Bay.
That's good. That's really good. Excellent. Have we got any questions that have come in at all, Stuart?
None about the topic you're on now. No, I'm afraid not. But there's obviously a few others relating to general business.
We'll come back to that in a minute.
Yes.
We've been 15 minutes now, so
Yeah.
I'm really aware of people's time. One of the feedback I've had from people is how much time it can take out of the day to actually listen to this, so we'll try and keep it short and snappy. But I just wanted to maybe finish before we just do maybe one or two questions on the onboarding events that have happened this week. And I think we've had a few little small glitches, IT related, and we can only apologise for that to people and assure you that we'll do our best to learn from that, and that you are incredibly welcome. Is there anything anybody wants to say about the onboarding events or about anything else that we haven't covered?
I think the feedback from the onboarding events from the staff that attended, particularly in the South Lakes onboarding, was very, very positive. Staff felt really welcome, and actually we had a really fantastic atmosphere. People were really up for the change. I think people are ready now to move on and get engaged.
And also Jo and I have got a call in each day with all the service managers. So if you are having issues, it's a good idea to raise them to your service manager, who will then bring it to that call, and we'll either escalate it to the powers that be, etc., or we can resolve it. So we're just continually keeping a log of what the resolution was. So I would encourage staff to raise it with the service managers, who are then invited to that call.
Okay,
daily.
brilliant. And we've invited all of our South Cumbria colleagues to the Listening Into Action events as well.
We have. So I understand. I know that people have attended the EIS one earlier this week.
Early intervention psychosis.
Yes, and our personality disorder one earlier in the week, because Cumbria have a very good pathway in terms of personality disorder. So yes, they've all had invites and they're encouraging them to attend. And
just one that I'm personally leading is on values and behaviours. So again, I really welcome your involvement into that as well. So should we take one question?
Yes, not really on topic, but I think it's a good question. Kevin would like to ask, I think staff are mostly quite enthusiastic about the future organisation, but at the same time concerned at what we might lose. In CPFT, you know what that is. We were localities, then went to networks with some great improvements. Going back to localities has a lot of logic and potential, but the developments through networks should be held on to if possible.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question, thank you, and a good reflection. We absolutely mustn't lose what's really good. Yeah. As we go forward this year, we will more or less certainly be moving into integrated care partnership, a structure, so that we will most likely have a structure for Morecambe Bay and South Cumbria, alongside the other structures we'll have for the rest of Lancashire. But within that, the whole purpose of that is to work in very local communities. And we must take the best of what you've been doing in South Cumbria. I don't know if there's anything you want to say about that, Jo.
We've been working across now to introduce all the teams to each other across Morecambe Bay, so the South Cumbria and the Lancashire Care teams, and then we've been working in clinical pathway groups just to try and make sure we don't lose anything of what's good out there already. So I know LD have got some really good pathways that we want to make sure we don't lose. They've got some really good working practices, and they're a really passionate group again who want to hold on to learning disabilities. Sorry, I did it again. So yeah, they're a really passionate group who want to hold on to what they've got. So again, the staff are the key, and just enabling them to continue with that passion and to drive forward with the improvements, I think is what my
the
job
fact they'll
is.
be part of having more expertise and more interest,
more access,
will be really, really good as well.
I think to add as well that we've got the consultation events around restructuring, locality restructuring, and I think that's a really important. I really understand that point that's been made, because the developments that I've heard about in CPFT recently about the strength and the empowerment that people have experienced with that with the network restructure. But we that's an important thing for us to hear at those locality restructuring sort of
most
consultation
definitely.
events. There's one at Stonecross Manor, isn't there,
Yeah.
which I think it'd be great if people could come to. I can't remember the date offhand, but
14th
the
of
invitations
November.
14th of
There we
November.
go. There we go. Okay, so there's a good invite for you. Okay, so try to keep it short this time. Thank you ever so much, and keep your questions coming, even if they haven't. If you haven't had time to think it through, or you're watching this afterwards, then we will respond to everybody's question. So thank you very much indeed, folks.